I used to struggle constantly with creative block, especially when I first started painting 5 years ago. And I remember that feeling being so frustrating because I had such a strong desire to make things, but it felt like every time I sat down in front of a blank page or a new canvas, there was some kind of invisible barrier that stopped me from actually being creative and starting something. Don't get me wrong, I still deal with this on occasion, but over the past 2 years or so, I've spent a lot of time reflecting on why it happens and also trying a bunch of different techniques to try and manage it. And today, I want to talk about 3 things I've learned that have helped me overcome creative block 99% of the time. One of them is a simple trick that I use to deal with blocks immediately, while the other 2 have to do with changing habits and perspectives about being creative. Those ones take a little bit more time and effort to work on, but by combining all 3, I've gotten to a point where my problem is no longer struggling to come up with ideas, but actually having too many ideas and not enough time to bring them all to life. The first technique I have for dealing with artist block is something I've used a lot over the years, and it's really useful if I'm in the midst of feeling uninspired or unsure about what to paint, and I'm getting kind of frustrated or worked up about it. What I do is grab a scrap sheet of paper or a sketchbook or a notebook that I don't mind getting messy in, and I really just sit down and try to draw as subconsciously or automatically as possible. That means I'm not trying to create a specific image that I have in my head, do anything that looks good, or even would be shared with anyone else. I literally just let my pen lead the way. So I'm drawing shapes, lines, doodles, basically whatever comes out. And I do this for about 45 to 60 minutes, if not longer. Basically, as long as I need to get really lost in it and spend some time in that flow. To me, this technique accomplishes 2 things. First of all, it relaxes me. If I'm feeling really frustrated about coming up with an idea for a painting or dealing with a problem that I have in a project that I'm currently working on, then the negativity and anxiety of that feeling can actually make it much harder to deal with the issue constructively. And what I find is that going back to basics and drawing subconsciously or automatically allows me to re-enter a headspace where I'm way more in control of my emotions. It also puts me in a state of mind where I feel much more connected to the creative part of my brain. There's a difference between the way that I think when I'm in a creative headspace and the way that I think when I'm in a logical or analytical headspace. And there's lots of times in my life where I need to be rational. But when it comes to doing something creative like painting or drawing, it follows that being in a creative headspace is the most helpful way to accomplish that. When I'm dealing with a block, a lot of the time it's because I'm in a logical state of mind trying to solve a creative problem. And the act of sitting down to draw automatically or subconsciously really helps me think creatively again. What I find is that after about an hour or so, the floodgates kind of open. My imagination is a lot more active. And if I'm able to stay in that flow, then I tend to stumble into new ideas or find myself revisiting old ideas and decide that I want to pursue them further. The only issue with this technique is that sometimes it's not quite enough. There have been times when I've tried it and it really hasn't worked for me. But in a way that makes sense because it's kind of a band-aid solution. And ultimately, I don't think any quick fix is ever going to be the most sustainable way to deal with a problem. It's a good thing to try in a pinch, and worst case scenario, I know it will at least calm me down. But if we take this concept of trying to open the door to the creative mind a little bit further, there's another technique that I've learned over the past few years that is a lot more reliable. It just takes longer because it's about creating a habit of painting or drawing every single day. People talk about this all the time. And when I first started painting, I guess I didn't realize just how important it was to form that habit. I'm not going to go into all the reasons why it's helpful, but when it comes to artist block, the biggest benefit is that drawing for even 30 minutes or an hour every day helped me train my brain to get used to being in a creative headspace on a regular basis. The more of a habit it became, the easier it was for me to let go of the anxieties and frustrations I was dealing with in my everyday life and allow myself to enter this playful and creative part of my mind. And when that door is open, it's a lot easier for me to make connections that I typically wouldn't make with my logical mind, and come up with ideas and concepts for things to paint. It's one of those things that seems simple on the surface, but it does take a certain amount of willpower and dedication to get used to. Once I did though, I found that I was coming up with new ideas all the time. And now, because I paint for at least 6 or 7 hours every single day, the number of ideas that I have is way higher than the amount of time I have to explore everything. And to me, that's a much better problem to have. The last thing I want to share that's helped me with creative block has to do with the perspective I've tried to cultivate about making things over the past few years. Sometimes the reason I deal with artist block is not because I don't have any ideas, but because I'm scared that if I explore those ideas, the products I create won't be good enough. The high expectations and pressure that I put on myself to only make things that are successful actually does way more harm than good. And a huge part of the journey I've been on to teach myself how to paint over the past 5 years has been about letting go of those expectations and embracing imperfection, allowing myself to fail and make mistakes and recognize that it's an essential part of the learning process. Not every idea is a good idea, and not every painting I make is going to work. But if I don't at least try to bring it to life and really take it to the point of completion, then I'll never know. I've spent a lot of time training myself to let go of my perfectionist tendencies and just paint for the sake of painting, because I love doing it, because I love the way it makes me feel, how it allows me to express myself, how rewarding it is to watch myself get better with every project that I finish. And the more I'm able to approach a new idea with this perspective, the easier it is for me to start and see where it takes me, instead of feeling blocked or afraid. In a way, this is what's helped me the most with creative block, because the stakes for coming up with an idea are now so much lower. I don't need to come to the canvas with a concept for a masterpiece every single time I paint something. All I have to do is come up with an idea that's interesting to me, trust my instincts a little bit, and just enjoy the process. Maybe the result is great, maybe it isn't, but ultimately that doesn't matter. Because to me, painting is not about creating products. It's about trying to feel the rush of joy and excitement that I get when I'm being creative as often as possible. And the more that I do it, the easier it is to get there.